The Green Bay Packers have a million receivers. We'll tell you which one we are buying in Dynasty Leagues next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Michael Fabiano. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. You can also check out all of his great work over on SI. And on today's show, we're taking a look at the top buys, sells, and sleepers from the NFC North. And let's start with the Packers receivers, because I think, Fabs, this is one of the more important things in fantasy this year, is figuring out who is going to be the top target getter in Green Bay. Who do you think it's going to be?
I like Jayden Reed, and I might be a bit biased because I loved him last year. And when you looked at the first part of the season, he was every bit a solid wide receiver one. First 6 games, 17.7 points per game, averaging nearly 6 targets per game. And then the wheels fell off, right? The rest of the season, 8.3 points per game, 3.7 targets per game over the final 11. And I think part of the reason why was like the Packers just lean on Josh Jacobs a lot. And even if you look at Jordan Love's numbers, they went down. None of the receivers were really spectacular in terms of putting up really good, consistent levels of production. But I am still in on Jayden Reed. He's 25 years old. He has shown that he can be a highly productive wide receiver. He's entering his 3rd NFL season. A lot of times, third-year wide receivers break out. We used to talk about those guys all the time back in the day. And I know that the Packers drafted Matthew Golden and Fabiano Williams, but if we're looking long-term, Christian Watson's in a contract year. They're not bringing him back because he has been an absolute dud. He's always hurt. And then Romeo Doubs is also going to be a free agent. So do they re-sign either one of those two guys? I don't think they bring back Watson. If they brought in Golden and Fabiano Williams, then they've got a couple of replacements there. Reed is also, if you read reports on him, he's bulked up in the offseason. He's kind of taken a leadership role in the locker room. You know, there were reports about the Drew Rosenhaus, who's his new agent, going to the Packers and saying, hey, you guys drafted wide receivers. Is Jayden still the number one? Those have been kind of debunked. But at this point now, I think Jayden Reed is the best fantasy wide receiver in that locker room. I got to be honest with you. I'm just not a believer in Matthew Golden as a potential alpha in the NFL. I'm just not. Maybe he'll prove me wrong ultimately. But I just don't see him being like a Devontae Adams type of wide receiver. I don't think they have that wide receiver on their roster. So at the end of the day, while consistency might be an issue, I like Jayden Reed this season and long term. You can tell me to get on that crazy train, but I am a big fan of Jayden Reed. Yes, I am very bummed out that Ozzy Osbourne passed away. Rest in peace.
I really struggle with this Green Bay receiving core because I like a lot of these players, but I don't love them. And that's the way I feel about Jayden Reed. Is I feel like he is a good complementary player, right? Like you would love to have him paired with like an alpha X receiver because he's really good out of the slot. He's good after the catch. It's just, I don't feel great about him as a top target getter. And that's where this whole thing gets so confusing to me. I agree with you on Matthew Golden. Like I did not love Matthew Golden pre-draft. I thought when he was being talked about as a potential top 20 pick, that was crazy to me. But actually, I like where he went with Green Bay. But he's not the most polished route runner. He doesn't always play to his 4.2 speed. But is there a chance he could be like Chris Olave? Maybe. And if he's Chris Olave, then he's probably the most valuable fantasy receiver. Fabs, there's also part of me that I kind of think Dontavian Wicks is the best receiver, but he really, really struggles to catch the ball. And it's really hard to be a good fantasy receiver if you don't catch the ball. We saw a stat last year from ESPN and their analytics team The Dontavian Wicks had the 4th best open score among all receivers last year. It was Mike Evans, Malik Neighbors, A.J. Brown, and Dontavian Wicks. He's one of the best receivers after the catch as well, but they have like a catch score from 0 to 100. His score was 0, which is the worst that you can possibly get. Like I said, it's really hard to put up fantasy points when you struggle to catch the ball. But I have just been passing on all of these receivers in dynasty leagues, startup leagues, because I just can't figure it out.
Again, this might be me being a bit biased. Dontavian Wicks is certainly a talented guy, although I think I have a little PTSD with him because if you remember last season, the Packers had a bunch of injuries to their receivers, and everyone jumped on Wicks and started him, and he did nothing. Yeah. And so the consistency is not there. I mean, it could potentially, flip this season. But right now, for me, I think the best and safest fantasy player in that locker room among wide receivers is Jayden Reed.
So let's talk about Jayden Reed's price right now. He's wide receiver 44 in dynasty leagues. And honestly, that's to the point for me that I'm perfectly fine paying that price. A couple of the receivers that are going in a similar range. Chris Godwin, wide receiver 39. I don't know if you saw the report that came out yesterday. Chris Godwin had another surgery. There was some Twitter doctor speculating that, like, hey, he might not be 100% until late into the season. Where would you stand between Godwin and Reed?
I love how you say a Twitter doctor.
Well, they're out there.
I know. So he didn't just stay at a Holiday Inn. He's actually a doctor. Okay.
Yeah, but they're on Twitter a lot.
I mean, like with Godwin, there's major risk. Why would you want Chris Godwin over Jayden Reed in the Dynasty League? Because Chris Godwin is 29 years old. He's coming off of a major injury. The Buccaneers already drafted his replacement. I mean, I know they signed him to a 3-year deal, but you know how those kind of things go, Marcus. So, Godwin's value is certainly in this state of flux right now. And the same goes for Brandon Ayuk. I mean, we could talk about that too. I mean, we don't know when he's coming back. So this is going to make guys like a Jayden Reed or a Ricky Pearsall, whenever he comes back, he's supposed to be back at some point sooner rather than later, more valuable across the board in fantasy.
A couple other receivers going in this range. You tell me who you prefer. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 40, Jaywan Jennings, wide receiver 41, Jaden Higgins, wide receiver 42, and then Khalil Shakir, wide receiver 43.
I probably go with all of those guys over Reed except for Shakir. Okay. Jennings is tough because he's come out and said he wants to be traded. He's in a contract year. And so who knows what the future holds for him. But I mean, for this upcoming season, I mean, if Ayuk's out, ain't no Debo anymore. He could get a lot of targets. And Ricky Pearsall, as much as I love the talent, that dude can't stay healthy.
Yeah. I would prefer Jayden Reed because Jennings is already 28. I mean, he was never a fantastic athlete, even coming into the NFL. We're probably past the peak, which was last year, I think, when he was given a chance to be the number 1 alpha receiver and he was putting up big numbers. I do think he's somebody that's very interesting, kind of as a flex play week to week, but I would rather take the chance on Khalil Shakir, Jayden Reed, Ricky Pearsall, who are all being drafted after him.
Yep. Yeah. Shakir is an interesting, that Bills wide receiver group is going to be interesting. We talk about how Green Bay is kind of jacked and they've got a lot of guys and we're not exactly sure who the one is. I mean, Buffalo's kind of the same thing. I mean, Buffalo could potentially mirror what we're dealing with in Green Bay too, right? Where their best receiver is Khalil Shakir, who's a slot guy.
All right, let's talk about Aaron Jones because he's one of the more difficult players to figure out in dynasty leagues. Should you be selling him before the bottom falls out? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or you're planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, and your spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. Monarch Money has been a part of my family for the last 8 or 9 months, and it's unbelievable how much money we were spending on coffee runs and subscriptions that we weren't using. Monarch Money has helped us actually grow some of our savings and start building some wealth. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. This episode is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. And the effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head over to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That is RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatments. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Fabs, let's talk about some players that we are selling from the NFC North. Who do you got?
I'm going to go with Aaron Jones, who was very good last season.
Yeah.
He was the running back 14. He had 306 touches, though. That was the most he's ever had in a single season in his career. Like, you would think, wow, really? Because he was a workhorse in Green Bay, had some injury issues here and there. But, yeah, he had a career-high 306 touches last year. Now he's entering his age 30 season, and we all are concerned about running backs who get to that big 3-0. You're worried about regression. And obviously, the Vikings also brought in Jordan Mason, who's 26, and they traded for him. And so they obviously liked him. And we saw Jordan Mason. And you could say, well, it's a Shanahan offense. Okay, but I think he's a talented guy who did not get traded for in order to sit on the bench. And so I do wonder if this is going to look more like a committee in 2025. And right now, Aaron Jones is the RB30, and there are several younger running backs who are getting drafted behind him, including Jordan Mason. And I think that if you don't look at a running back's age, especially when he hits 30, that is the ultimate sin when it comes to fantasy football. Yes, Marcus, that went right over your head. That's an Ozzy Osbourne song. But I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up Ozzy.
That's right. Go ahead. You're more than, yeah, go ahead.
But Aaron Jones has been a very good fantasy running back. I just worry that the floor is a lot lower than it maybe was last season because, as much as we like Ty Chandler, he didn't really pan out. And so now you're looking at a player who's more talented than Chandler and Jordan Mason potentially taking touches. And if Aaron Jones suffers any kind of injury or we just start to see regression after a big workload last year, listen, there's a world where Jordan Mason is the more valuable fantasy running back than Aaron Jones just for this season. And things aren't going to get better for Aaron Jones over the last 2 years of his contract in Minnesota. Statistically, likely he's only going to get worse.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I think the only issue for me
I
is
hear
that,
a butt in there.
Well, it's just that he's RB30 right now. And it's like, even if you're right, if Jordan Mason comes in and takes some touches away and Aaron Jones becomes a part-time player, what are you really selling him for? Like some of the running backs drafted behind him are like Tony Pollard and Zach Charbonnet and Tajay Spears and Najee Harris. Like, I think I'd rather just have Aaron Jones for a year than have any of those guys. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if you can flip him for, a future second round pick or whatever, I think you do that. But I kind of think he's correctly valued right now.
Right. No, I'm not saying that the value isn't isn't obscene, at this point. Like but like I'd rather have DeAndre Swift, honestly, than Aaron Jones.
Okay.
I'd rather have Tony Pollard than Aaron Jones. And these guys are getting drafted behind him. Tyrone Tracy, I don't know about that so much, but Brian Robinson Jr., I mean, a younger running back. I'd rather have him than Aaron Jones.
You're just getting out. This basically thing. You'd rather just swap him for a younger player.
There's players that you want to get ahead of before that regression comes. And I do wonder if that regression is coming this season, because once again, you bring in a Jordan Mason who's 26, who's in the prime of his career, who showed some flashes last year when he was healthy. And I could see this being a committee. I really could. And I was surprised Aaron Jones was as good as he was last season, to be quite honest with you. And so I just worry about, again, that floor dropping out and Jordan Mason maybe being the better of the two running backs in Minnesota.
All right. The player that I'm selling from the NFC North is Jameson Williams. And it's mostly because I just think he's a little overvalued right now. Well, a couple of things. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to be able to trade him before the year starts and get a pretty nice haul, because we've already seen some training camp clips and we've heard people talk about him. And he's just an exciting player, right? Like there are certain players every year that honestly, it's a lot of because of speed. Because of their speed, they get overhyped a little bit. I think we're there with Jameson Williams. I'm not saying that he is a bad football player or anything like that, because I think he's very good. But we're still talking about an offense that goes through Amon-Ra St. Brown, where Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get a ton of touches. So will David Montgomery. They have Sam Laporta. He's just never going to be the focal point of this offense. And I understand, you're not paying for him to be a focal point, but you are still paying wide receiver 28, wide receiver 29 prices. And I just think there's some other receivers in that range that offer a higher floor and honestly, maybe a higher ceiling as well.
Yeah, listen, I love watching the kid play. He's exciting. Like you said, he's kind of like one of those guys that you like to have on your fantasy team because he can catch it and take it to the house on any offensive snap. And I wouldn't say that I would be opposed to trading him, but I would want to get Xavier Worthy in return if we're doing, maybe a 1-for-1, something like that. Because you're right. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown is always going to be the focal point of that offense. But that offense has been so productive, although things might change under a new offensive coordinator with Ben Johnson going. I don't know that they will, but there's a lot of talent on that offense. But if you can get someone who might be more of a featured player at that same age range on his respective NFL team, then I could see that sort of scenario. But I mean, he's young, he's 24 years old, and the explosive type player. I mean, people forget too, like in his last year in college, he got hurt. And so if he hadn't gotten hurt, he would have been a first-round pick, that year. And then, the Lions ended up obviously drafting him. Super, super talented. And
they drafted him very high. I think it was the 12th overall pick in that draft. Yep.
Yeah. And a great playmaker. But if there are some potential options out there in terms of making a trade for a player. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to give you Rashee Rice for him. That's why I mentioned Xavier Worthy.
No,
but a player ballpark in that same sort of age range who has a chance to potentially be the alpha for his team. Yeah, I can certainly see that. I am never traded I will trade all day long with anyone involved. That doesn't matter. I'll listen to offers all day long.
Let me give you a couple of trades that have happened that at least I would consider. Jameson Williams straight up for DK Metcalf. I prefer Metcalf in dynasty leagues.
Boy, I tell you something. I don't know if I do. I don't know who the quarterback in Pittsburgh is going to be, brother. After 1 year,
I know, but it's just
I don't know.
He is guaranteed to get so many targets, whether it's from Aaron Rodgers or whoever they eventually get. They paid him an ungodly amount of money, right? Like it's so much money to be that alpha number one receiver. And it's not like Metcalf is old. He's 27.
Yeah.
Like it's
I'll back you on that one.
Okay. All right. Here's another one. We got Jameson Williams for the 5th overall pick in this year's draft.
Yeah, I would do that all day long.
Okay. Jameson Williams for Jaylen Waddle, straight up.
Man, no, I'm not. I'd rather have Jameson Williams.
I think I'd rather have Waddle, just because it's less condensed there.
Yeah, I mean the Dolphins. The Dolphins quarterback situation. I mean, is one concussion from being Zach Wilson. And listen, I get it. I mean, the Lions, behind Jared Goff, it's not like we have, some great quarterback back there either, but Goff has been very durable in his NFL career, whereas, Tua has not been. I just think Jameson Williams is a better playmaker than Jaylen Waddle. Very close, though.
Can I give you one more that I think is really interesting? Because both of these players have some knuckleheadedness to them. So that needs to be factored. Yeah, George Pickens, who's being drafted right behind him, or actually 2 spots behind. Wow, it's Jameson Williams, Jordan Addison, and George Pickens. What a nice little trio, and then Tyreek Hill behind them.
Yeah,
both of these guys are 24 years old. They're both going into, I think Williams has the 5th-year option, but they're both going into year 4. They're both the clear-cut wide receiver 2s on their respective offenses. Why is Addison being valued more so than George Pickens?
Because we know what the future holds for Addison. He is in a very fantasy-friendly offense. Not that Pickens isn't, but we don't know if he's going to be a Cowboy after this upcoming
season. You mean Williams, not Addison, right? Williams is in a
Williams. Yes. This is. I thought you had said Addison. My bad.
Yeah, well, he's in that tier. He's wide receiver 30. Pickens is wide receiver 31. Those 3 are all tied together.
I'd rather have Jameson Williams over George Pickens, and honestly, I'd probably rather have Jordan Addison over George Pickens. I don't know what George Pickens' future is going to look like. I don't either. I mean, think about it though. How can the Cowboys keep? I mean, maybe outside of the franchise tag, but I mean, we don't know what's going on with Micah Parsons. I mean, what happens if they've got to use the tag on him? I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for George Pickens. What happens if he comes out and does not have a good season, which we kind of all expect that he would? A lot of question marks there. Again, this just might be me being biased because I really like Jameson Williams and I like Jordan Addison as well. Those 2 guys just come with fewer question marks long term for me than George Pickens. And I mean, not for nothing, George Pickens has never really been like a consistently good fantasy player.
Well, neither is Jameson Williams. That's the issue that we're here as well.
No. But Jameson Williams last season, he showed me something.
Okay.
And he is again a secondary option. And I don't know that George Pickens, will he ever be an alpha in the NFL? I mean, we kind of thought, well, maybe last season, that could be the case.
Probably not. But I don't think Jameson Williams will be either, which makes
and the really Steelers tough. And the fact that the Steelers wanted to get rid of him, I mean, like Mike Tomlin and that team are pretty good in terms of knowing which players they want to keep and which players they want to jettison. And they were pretty quick to jettison George Pickens.
True.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah.
So I hope he has a big year. I'd rather have those other 2 wide receivers.
All right, let's talk about some sleepers from the NFC North, including one sleeper for Fabs that is not a sleeper at all, and I'm going to push back on it. We will get to that next. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft boards ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions that we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, Fabs and I are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran playing your millionth league. I love Yahoo Fantasy. I've been playing for years. It's my favorite fantasy platform. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win big. It all begins on August 4th. So stay tuned and start by creating your own fantasy league on Yahoo Fantasy at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That is yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Wanted to let you know that the Locked On NFL Top 100 is here, voted on by the NFL host of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by experts that cover these teams and players every single day. Find the full list on Locked On Sports today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Fabs, let's talk about some NFC North sleepers. You texted me your name yesterday, and I got to say, I don't know if this qualifies as a sleeper, but make your case.
No, he's more of a breakout player for me.
Okay.
I mean, it's Romeo. I just wanted to talk about him because I liked Jayden Reed as more of a buy because the value could potentially be there. He's not going to be as expensive. If you wanted to trade for Odunze, it's going to be a lot more. So yeah, he's more of a breakout player for me. Last year, 101 targets, 54 catches, no Keenan Allen anymore. That was 121 targets out the door. And I'm still surprised he's not signed by another team.
Yeah.
I know the Bears added Luther Burden and Olamide Zaccheaus and obviously Colston Loveland, but I still think Odunze is going to be second in targets behind DJ Moore. The Bears added obviously an offensive-minded head coach and Ben Johnson. They improved their offensive line with Joe Tooney and Drew Dahlman and Jonah Jackson. We hope that Caleb Williams takes that step to maybe not stardom, but getting in that direction under Johnson. There's no excuses anymore. I was a big fan of Odunze coming out of college. He just ended up being in the same sort of situation as Jackson Smith and Jigba, where he came into a roster that you already had two pretty good veterans ahead of him. In that case, it was DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. But Allen is gone. And so, yeah, I would agree that this is not so much of a sleeper. It just, I wanted to talk about Odunze, and this was kind of the only spot that I could. To me, he is a very high-end breakout type of player who could end up being, a very strong fantasy option for you for many, many years to come. Nothing in the offseason happened with the Bears on the offensive side of the football that was anything less than very positive.
How aggressively are you targeting Romeo Odunze in your dynasty leagues and fantasy leagues? Because right now he's wide receiver 21. He's behind names like Devontae Smith, Xavier Worthy, one spot ahead of Terry McLaurin. Are you making him like a top 20 fantasy guy that you're kind of going after?
Yeah, top 20, top 25. Yeah, for sure. There's certain players that you kind of fall in love with, right? When you're playing fantasy football. And as an analyst, that happens to me every single year, right or wrong. Odunze is one of those guys for me this season.
I saw a stat yesterday that Romeo Odunze ran 121 routes last year where there was no target on the play.
Wow.
Think about that. 121 routes where there was no target just because of sacks or throwaways. I mean, it was a bad offensive environment.
Yes.
I think with Ben Johnson this year, even with the added playmakers of Luther Burden and Colston Loveland, he's just going to be far more effective. Not always, but most of the time, these year two breakouts, it used to be year three. Like year three was when these receivers broke out. Now it's happening in year two. I just don't think it's going to be a struggle for him like it was last year. I just think even if nothing changes about Rome, I think the environment is going to be so much better that he's going to be an effective player this year.
I know Marvin Harrison Jr. is ranked ahead of him. I have him ranked ahead of Romeo Odunze, but I would not be shocked if Odunze was a better fantasy player than Marvin Harrison Jr. In their respective year twos. I just would not. Harrison's got the name with his old man, and I understand that, and he's in a good situation as well. Well, I mean, Romeo Odunze, I think is right there from a dynasty perspective.
My sleeper is Roschon Johnson, who we've talked about a couple different times on this podcast. Roschon Johnson is the backup running back right now for Chicago, but I wonder if he's going to be the David Montgomery role. And I hate to make the comparison just because Ben Johnson left from the Lions and going to the Bears, but I just don't know if DeAndre Swift is going to be the guy that can handle a lot of the short yardage. And there's going to be somebody else in this backfield that gets touches. Roschon is a third-round pick who has gotten some goal line touches in the past. He's only 24. He's got some size, and you can get him as RB 55 right now. I think we both project this Bears offense to be really good this season, and I just want as many parts of it as I can get. And unfortunately, it's just a very expensive offense, right? Caleb Williams is a top 10 quarterback. Romeo Odunze, top 20 receiver. DJ Moore, top 25 receiver. Luther Burden, top 35 receiver. Colston Loveland, one of the top tight ends right now in dynasty leagues. So if I can get Roschon Johnson at RB 55, I'm okay stashing him and just feeling out how this running back situation goes in Chicago.
Yeah, if you're talking about, a typical redraft, I mean, he's one of those 0 RB targets that you want to go after somewhere late in your draft. And from a dynasty perspective, it's the same sort of thing. I mean, he's relatively inexpensive. And if anything happens to DeAndre Swift, then, we see him move up the depth chart. And that's the one spot where the Bears didn't really make improvements, right? I mean, there was even some reports out there that they were potentially going to draft Ashton Genty if he had gotten to them, which clearly
and Travion Henderson was a target that they wanted in the second round, and New England sniped him a couple of picks ahead.
So, right. See, sniping doesn't only happen in fantasy. It happens in real NFL drafts too. So, but ultimately they didn't make any sort of big move. So yeah. And that's something that I think, people out there, you have to keep in mind. Like Trey Benson's another guy. I mean, James Conner's entering into his age 30 campaign. He's been more durable lately in his career, maybe than he was in Pittsburgh. But I mean, Trey Benson could jump into a big role and if Conner gets hurt, and that's kind of the same thing in Chicago. So certainly a worthy dart throw, no question.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.